Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much, Dave. Let me
Great to
try to
see you.
share. Let me try to share first, and let me know that you can see.
Looking good.
Excellent. All right. Well, welcome in everyone to our presentation on personal finance. So it's called Investing in Yourself, Planning for Your Financial Future. And it's super important. I think we want you to think of education as the start of an investment. I actually have with me today also Mary Yatcko, who is um, a director of financial aid, and she's going to speak a little bit as well about the role that the financial aid department plays. My name is Darren Cesca, and I run the default prevention and management processes here at Post University, and I also play a big role with anything related to financial literacy and personal finance. So today we're going to be talking about financial aid and you and how that process impacts your development. Then we're going to talk a little bit specifically regarding your federal student loans, the loan repayment process and some of your options, and how I think learning to manage your federal student loans is a great stepping stone to learning more about how you can bring that into your personal finance realm. And then we'll talk about some personal finance pieces. So SMART goals and how you can use them for making financial decisions. We'll break down a little bit about budgeting and what a spending plan could look like, impulse spending, and some additional shopping tips that you could maybe use. And then we're going to talk a lot about credit, what it means, what a credit score is, what a FICO score is, how it affects you, how you can build your credit. Um, so we have a lot to cover. So why don't we get started if you're there, Mary?
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing this afternoon? So one of the first things I want to talk about, and this is an interesting question that comes up. And for those of you who have not had a chance to hop into my Monday night webinars, my name is Mary Yatcko. I'm the Director of Financial Aid. I work particularly with our undergrad students that are active and in school. So I work very closely with Maria, Craig, Darren, and Dave in my day-to-day. But one of the really big questions that comes out of those webinars that I do with Dave and Beth Renko is really, how does the financial aid process go beyond just selecting a payment method and really building me up? And so I have a couple slides that I just want to touch upon real quick. And I also have my everyone's favorite reminder, please refrain from putting personal questions regarding your student file in the chat. I will share my email shortly and you can be more than welcome to email me and I can connect you with the right person. That's my disclaimer for y'all. But the big thing is I want you to think about, what does the financial aid process teach you? I want you to think about what skills it helps develop in you and that you can share and you can build upon. So the first one is really planning and follow through. If you think about it, the decision to go back to school involves several different planning pieces, as well as involves follow through and research. So one of the first things you will do is identify and evaluate what payment method works best for you. And for each of us on this call, we have a different lens that we bring to the table. Thus, it creates a different payment method that works specifically to us. Some of us will work with our employers and do direct bill and tuition reimbursement. Some of us may set up cash payment plans. Some of us may opt to use private loans or federal student aid programs. Darren's going to talk a little bit about how those programs impact your personal finance later, but even just the question of how do I pay for school and that planning process that goes into it helps impact us and really prepare us for career readiness. Research is an essential skill and a great soft skill to develop, and researching which payment method helps you learn to evaluate and dive into all that information. Alrighty. The next thing is time management. Now, if you think about it, we have documents that we need to complete within a specific time frame. A lot of students will use the federal student aid program, but also if you're using your employer programs, whether it's direct bill or the tuition reimbursement, there are certain time frames that you have to complete things by. There are certain documents that you need to be prepared and get ready for at the start of every academic year. There's conversations that you're going to have with your financial aid advisor. Having that lens on time management is very helpful because it helps prepare you to really speak to, how can I use my time wisely? How do I manage my time? How do I make sure I am completing all my asks within the timely manner, and I'm prioritizing that. The next thing is it's always good to get things done quickly, but are we being accurate? Do we have an attention to detail? Making sure that when you are setting up your payment methods that you have the associated documents completed correctly helps minimize delays. And you want to make sure that you're being thoughtful. You are ensuring that you're not rushing when you're completing items. Sometimes being fast does not mean we're being accurate. And really speaking to the attention to detail and completing the different payment methods helps show how you focus on those intricate and nuanced details to make sure everything is accurate and correct, because in the end, that actually makes good time management because you get things done quickly. Now, if you look to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about other elements that come up. Evaluation and analysis skills. Now, this is tough. Sometimes it's how do I vocalize that I have created and evaluated and made the right decision? Well, one thing is actually reviewing and analyzing what you've selected as a payment method. It's making sure that's the right option for you. A great example is myself. When I first started going to school, I was a retail manager. I was sick and tired of working 12-hour days, working till midnight, going back to work at 6 a.m. And I had very little disposable income. My best option at the time was to use federal student aid. Once I got in school and I started receiving promotions at my work, I was eligible for tuition reimbursement. And so I worked with my employer and I worked with my school to set up a tuition reimbursement program. This allowed me to not only I had a deduction, I had a corporate partnership. I was able to save a couple bucks with school, but I was also able to set up and evaluate what I needed best for me. And it's those moments, it's being able to revisit your previous research and decide, is this still the best option? Which becomes very critical in the workplace. That is a skill that is sometimes tough to learn, but it's essential once you learn it. The other thing that I want to talk about is persistence. Each person's educational journey may impact their payment method. It's persisting through the challenges. It's having that dedication and celebrating each victory. That is a wonderful soft skill that you get to share. Questions I like to ask when I am doing interviews is, tell me of a time where you overcame a challenge. Tell me a time where you had roadblocks and hurdles and obstacles put in your way. Persistence is a great way to develop it, and really thinking about how getting through that really tough class that you are just like, I don't know if I can do it. And Craig's cheering you on from the sidelines going, you got statistics, let's go. That was my tough class, by the way, right? So we're going through that, cheering on, but also what does that impact mean on your pace and your academic performance? That means that we're still moving forward towards our degree, we're meeting our needs, and then that also will impact your payment depending on the payment method you use. So that persistence piece is critical and crucial. And the other part I want to talk about is resilience. It's maintaining a positive mindset when you may encounter additional obstacles. The financial aid process is kind of like a game of chutes and ladders some days. Some days you're going right on up, you got everything good, and then all of a sudden there's an update that happens when I come back over here, and you keep going. We're going to get you to 100. We're going to get you to graduation. We're going to work together to get you as far as possible. But how do we maintain that positive mindset? As someone who does a lot of hiring, one of the conversations that I talk about very often is, tell me a time where you needed resilience. And so the financial aid process and some of the topics that Darren's going to talk about requires resilience, and it requires persistence to help you get to the end, really overcoming those obstacles and those unknown concerns. So the beautiful part is you've already started this process because we're here today. And so I want you to take a moment and pat yourself on the back. And then I want you to think about everything that you've already accomplished that we just talked about as Darren talks about the next couple moments as it relates to personal finance. Darren?
Great, thanks so much, Mary. You really set up kind of the rest of the presentation there. Much appreciated. So let's transition right over to student loans and financial aid. And we're going to get more specifically into personal finance. So the first place that I want to start is thinking about the repayment of your student loans. I mean, I think it's such a great place to start because many of the pieces that you need to have in place to manage your student loan repayment are going to apply to the same skills that you need for future financial decisions. When you're dealing with student loan repayment, you can think about things like interest and understanding how that works, choosing a repayment plan that works for you, and you can build credit through making consistent on-time payments. Now, a lot of people don't know that when you go into repayment on student loans, you're already placed onto a specific repayment plan, but you can change that immediately. And there are a lot of different options for repayment plans. So it sort of all depends where you are financially in your life at that point, and you want to pick a repayment plan that works for you. So just some of the basic ones, a standard repayment plan is where they start you. It's got a 10-year term, and it would be the same payment amount over those 10 years. So 12 payments a year for 10 years. Now you can do an extended type of plan, and there's a couple different ones, which means it's still going to be a consistent payment every month, but by extending the amount of time that you have to pay it off, which could be 20 or 25 years, you're going to have a lower payment. And then there are lots of different income-driven repayment plans that you can pick from. And depending on your situation there, it could greatly affect and lower your payment. It just sort of depends what fits your situation in your life. Now, one of the best ways that you can look into that is on studentaid.gov, which I hope you're all very familiar with, because that's where you would sign in to fill out your FAFSA, to do your exit and entrance counseling, and just to get any information you need on your student loans. So they have a process on there that's called the student loan simulator. And if you sign into there, it's great. It loads any student loans that you already have in place for you, and it gives you the ability to try out different situations. You can tell the simulator, this is what I want to do. For example, you could say, I want to pay off my loans as fast as possible. Or maybe I want the lowest payment that I can have. Or maybe I want to choose the amount that I want to pay. Or maybe I have a specific date that I want to pay it off by. And when you put that information in there, along with it asks for some income information, or if you're working, or whatever it might be, to try to give you the most accurate way that it's going to affect your payment. And then it will let you know, and you can actually choose from one of the choices if you prefer one payment over another. So I think it's a great tool. You can even check it before you leave school, just to kind of play around and start to get familiar and comfortable with the concept of you choosing the best way to repay your student loans. You can also go through there. It'll help you decide whether or not to consolidate your loans. Consolidation, for anybody that doesn't know, it's just what it does is a federal consolidation loan allows you to combine multiple federal loans into a single loan. So potentially, if you have multiple loans with different payment dates, you could consolidate them and only have to make one payment a month. So I did want to show quickly is this would be sort of what the screen would look like if you went through the loan simulator and had your different options. Now, I just put in sort of an arbitrary amount of $3,500 into the loan simulator. And just to give sort of, without going through all the details here, so you see a standard repayment plan in the middle. It has a $398 a month payment, and you notice that it will be paid off by 2034. Now, right underneath that is the extended version of that. Now you see the payment dropped to 237, but it's not going to get paid off until 2049. And the other thing to keep in mind is interest does accrue on loans. So if you look at the total amount that's paid at the standard repayment plan, you're paying about $47,000 at the end by the time the 10 years has passed. With the extended version, you're looking at about $71,000. So it's the kind of thing, it's great that you can change your options. So if your financial situation changes, maybe initially you want a lower payment, but then later on, if your financial situation changes and you have a salary that you can pay a little bit more, you can change your plan and you can make much larger payments and get your loans paid down a lot quicker. So I highly recommend just checking that out on studentaid.gov. So I want to talk a little bit about Inceptia. Now, Inceptia is a company that Post University partnered with many years ago, and they essentially give a free service to all Post University students that have student loans, and they're there to help you with any questions or anything in the process related to repaying your student loans. And if you need to reach out to your loan servicer, you can talk to Inceptia and they'll help advocate for you and help kind of bridge the gap in the conversation. They have all these free tools on their website, which is heronowl.org. As you can see, that's the NOWL, the knowledge owl. And you can go onto their website as well. This is what the homepage looks like when you see that. And the way that it works is if you receive anything from Inceptia, then at that point you'll be able to access their website and put your information in. And there's all kinds of great tools on there, or you can contact them directly if you have any questions. But certainly keep that name in mind. If you do happen to have federal student loans, once you finish school and graduate, they're going to be part of that process. So next I want to talk about SMART goals. Now, SMART goals are something, it's the method that you can use to reach any kind of goal that you want. It doesn't have to be financial, but we're going to talk about it in the financial sense. And the reason I think it's so great is it's simple. And once you memorize it, you can just easily apply it, and it will really help you focus in on a specific goal. So we're talking about specific, which means be clear about what you want to accomplish. Remember, you can't get what you want if you don't know what you want. Measurable. So you want to express your goals in clear numbers if possible, so you'll know where you are and you'll know when you've succeeded. Achievable, meaning you want to, that when you're improving your financial situation, it's first important to make sure the steps you're taking are realistic, right? So you can define those achievable steps based on your situation. Relevant is having it be something that's meaningful in your life. What's the reason why you've created this goal for yourself, and what will you get out of it when you do complete that goal? And time bound. So you always want to have some way of tracking the time of it to recognize when you should be reaching your goal. So let's just look a little bit at a specific financial goal. So I just kind of threw it together here, but let's say you have $2,500 in credit card debt. So the specific part, right? Pay off your credit card debt in full. The measurable part, well, that's the amount that's owed, so $2,500. Now, this is the achievable part that you can sort of decide depending on what your situation is. So I just threw it in here. So let's say pay a set amount of $250 each month plus whatever interest has accrued that month. And also to help yourself out, well, you could stop using the card temporarily until you've gotten the debt down. So relevant. So potentially you say, well, it increased the amount that you can save. So once you have this credit card debt paid off, maybe now that money that you were using to pay that credit card month every month, you can now put it towards a different goal that you have, put it towards saving or invest it, whatever you might want to do. And also you'll have a positive effect on your credit score. And then time bound. So we can figure out the timing based on all the other points that we've brought up. So if you have $2,500 that you want to pay off and you're paying $250 a month plus interest, well, then if you stay with your goal in 10 months, it'll be paid off. All right, let's talk a little bit about budgeting. So a budget is a realistic financial plan that you put together based on three things: income, which is what's coming in; expenses, that's everything that's going out; and then goals that you choose to set up additionally. Just remember, you can't spend more than you make. Now, a budget can have a lot of different parts on it, which is why I think it's great to either write them all out, or I highly recommend using a spreadsheet. You can use an app, but you want to try to catch everything, because I think initially we forget about some of those expenses that pop in and then they become surprises. So once you have it organized and in front of you, and you have the whole picture, you can make much more informed financial decisions. Now, additionally, you can look into things like spending plans. Now, what a spending plan means is that you have kind of rules laid out for yourself that you're going to try to stick by. Now, these are just examples. There are many other spending plans and rules that you can follow, and you could take something like this if you think it sounds interesting and alter it a little bit. Maybe go, I want the 50% to be more like 40%. And I want the 20% to be more like 30%. But just to kind of quickly break down, so in this plan, 50% goes towards your needs every month. So rent, food, transportation, student loans, credit cards, everything that you feel you have to be able to afford on a monthly basis. 20% for savings, and you can kind of decide what that savings looks like. If you have investments mixed in with maybe you're building an emergency account, and then you could have other goals additionally that you're saving for. And then 30 is for your wants. So this is money that you're allowing yourself within your budget to spend every month, sort of on what you want outside of being those specific needs. And then there's the 70-20-10 rule. Again, it's just slightly different the way that it's laid out. It's more front loaded in where they put living expenses and everything else that you're saving for, that you're putting money to every month. And then it's broken down still with 20% in that savings and investing side. And then they have 10% broken out for very specific debt. So if you had a credit card debt or you had a car payment, something like that. Again, these are just sort of ideas for you to think about and say, well, what would work for me? So, and as I was talking about, there are lots of different ways that you can do this, and you have to figure out what works best for you. I know nowadays there are tons of free apps for budgeting that will help you, where you can enter some of your information and you can set goals through the app as well. If you're sort of not a paper person, or you don't like using spreadsheets and putting in formulas, then apps will help you a lot in that process. These are just some of the free apps, if you've ever heard of any of these. There are also apps that you can pay a monthly fee on that will do a bit more for you, but any of these would be great. And then I love using Google Sheets for spreadsheets. Now, since we're talking about spending plans, let's talk about impulse buying. So impulse buying is purchasing something without planning to do so beforehand. Now, impulse buying on its own, I don't say is a bad thing, but letting your impulse buying get out of control can be a bad thing, right? So if you know you have the money to spend, then allowing yourself to have some impulse buys here and there is fine. But what you don't want to do is say get to the end of the month and not realize potentially where some of your money went because you went to a store and went out with friends and bought a whole bunch of things impulsively without sort of planning those purchases. And that's what we want to avoid. So we'll just run through some tips here. So avoid places of temptation, right? So malls, or if there are certain websites, online retailers, or restaurants where you know, if I go here, I'm tempted to just spend, then you might want to avoid them. So you could use cash and leave the credit card at home. I kind of like to issue the challenge of saying, hey, could you take a week or 2 weeks or a month and just go out with cash whenever you're going anywhere outside of purchasing your needs, right? So outside of bills and things like that, if you're just going out shopping essentially or going out to eat, just bring cash because you can limit yourself that way. And once the cash is gone, you say, that's all I have. So create a shopping list. I'm a big fan of lists. Lists kind of keep me focused on what I need, and then it feels like a great accomplishment if you can check everything off the list and say, I just got what I wanted, but I know it's everything that I needed. Avoid the one-click checkout. I know it's very convenient and it's promoted a lot, but sometimes just taking a little bit of extra time and effort to have to make a purchase would make you maybe reconsider and wonder if it's the right purchase. And waiting 24 hours, I tell anybody, if you're not sure, sleep on it, right? If you're not 100% sure that this is something I need, take the night, sleep on it. Don't shop hungry. And I think asking yourself, is the sale worth it? Now, assuming that we've looked at something and said, this is something that I for sure would like to purchase. It's passed the test. Other things to consider: compare prices before buying, shop around, look for coupons, and negotiate and ask for discounts. All that they can say is no. Buy in bulk. Now, you want to be careful with this because it's not always true, but oftentimes by spending a little more upfront, buying more, especially if it's non-perishable or, paper goods in particular. You can often find that buying in bulk will save you money long term. And buy for value, not price. So for example, you could get maybe one nice shirt, but for half the price, you could maybe get a package of 3 shirts. But how long are those 3 shirts going to last? If you think that the one that you're paying twice as much for is a great brand and you've had good luck with them in the past and maybe they last several years, as opposed to a name, an off brand that you're not sure of, and who knows, they might not last very long. So oftentimes consider value, not just the price. And lastly, let's just talk quickly a little about credit. So what's a credit rating? It's an estimate of the ability of a person or organization to fulfill their financial commitments based on previous dealings. So essentially, how responsible have you been in the past when you've been given credit? So how it affects you, that when you apply for credit, a lender will consider both your credit rating and credit history. So this is where building credit early is so helpful, because typically when you're in school or maybe leaving school, you'll be making smaller purchases and building your credit. And later on in life, as your career blossoms, maybe you're making a larger salary, you'll be making some of those bigger investments and purchases. And at that point, a better credit score can really help you. And the 2 things that most influence your credit score: how timely your payments are and how much debt you carry. So let's take a look at the breakdown. So this is generally how a FICO score is calculated. So I kind of focus on those 2 big pieces: the amount owed and your payment history. So how much debt do you carry versus your credit line? Meaning, if you say have a credit line of $2,000, if you're carrying $1,900 of debt on that credit line, it makes lenders pause and think that maybe you're close to bursting. And payment history, just set up, even if it's the minimum payment, on-time payment. Start establishing a history that when you do have credit, that you're making regular payments. And then also the other small pieces: new credit accumulation, types of credit, and length of credit. So if you haven't heard of it, a FICO score is just one of the most popular scores. It's used in 90% of lending decisions. And so you may be able to look it up if you belong to a bank and they have apps, or you have a credit app. Oftentimes you can look into your score and see it. And roughly that 670 mark is kind of what's looked at the minimum acceptable credit rating, and anything up from there. It goes all the way up to 850 typically. There are a couple other credit scores that are used, and the numbers are slightly different. But if you have a good FICO score, you're probably in good shape. These are just some general tips for maintaining good credit. So shop around for the best interest rate. Question every purchase. That kind of goes back to our impulse buying and setting smart goals. Do not use all your available credit. Right? So generally what lenders like to see is somewhere around 15 to 20% of your credit being used at a time. Pay your balance in full every month if you can. That's the ultimate goal. One of the things I do recommend for people, if you're starting out, get a credit card and put one monthly purchase on it. Maybe you just put a cable bill on it or a cell phone bill on it, and just have it automatically pay its balance every month, because you were going to pay it anyway. So why not get the bonus of building credit off of it? And of course, avoid carrying credit card debt at all costs. So if you can't pay it down, you want to at least keep it someplace where it's manageable. You don't want it to get inflated. So I highly recommend check out annualcreditreport.com. That is a government website where you can get weekly annual credit reports, and you can look and see and make sure everything looks okay on your credit report. In this day and age, it's very important to monitor your own credit. So these are the 3 major credit reporting bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can also request credit reports from them. And then your FICO score, if you'd like more information, it's ficoscore.com. And if you go to the /education page, you'll find a lot of great information on there. So I know that was a lot, but our time is short. So I hope you guys all learned something from that. I just wanted to put up the contact information for the financial aid department and then the contact information for myself at the bottom. So if you have any questions when it comes to loan repayment time, you can reach out to me at any point at post-default-prevention@post.edu. So I appreciate everyone for being here. I appreciate this platform. This is an exciting event, and I'm really glad to have been a part of it.
That was
Dave,
great,
take it
Darren.
away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, taking it away right now. Fantastic. Thank you. Looks like we're good here, unless someone has time for a quick question. But I think we are good to go. If not, boy, Darren, that was awesome. You packed that with information. Thank you. Good stuff.